the phone and attending via Zoom from the public is in listen-only mode. The following instructions apply to those who wish to speak during public comment. If you are listening on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature to notify the meeting facilitator. For those joining by telephone, please use *9 to indicate you would like to comment. Tell the board your full name and the magisterial district in which you reside before getting into the substance of your comment. If you don't know your magisterial district, provide a general location for your home or business. Street location or neighborhood name will suffice. Each speaker will be allowed no more than 3 minutes to comment. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. So with that explanation, I will call the roll and ask the board members to identify themselves and their general location. So let's see, Director Walsh.
Bucky Walsh, I'm at my home near Earlysville.
Director Jaquith.
I'm at my home in Stony Point.
Director Henry.
Present and at my residence in Albemarle County.
Director Fritz.
My home in Charlottesville.
Supervisor Palmer, Director.
Liz Palmer, and I am at my home in Ivy.
And Supervisor Price, Director.
Present and operating from the county office building.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thanks very much, Richie. Supervisor Price, it's nice to have you in high-speed mode for this meeting. Pity you had to drive so far to get there. Before I call for the approval of the agenda, I want to comment on it. I've not seen more good things to talk about on one of our agendas ever before. I am only mildly concerned that we will run long. I would prefer to run long having good things to do rather than not. But I will say that if we get to about 6:15 and we're not in sight of ending, we're going to take a 5-minute bio break and then resume after 5 minutes. And I'll just interrupt at the appropriate time and do that. Are there any adjustments or suggestions for the agenda? And as I call for those, let me go ahead and use the privilege of the chair and say, I have one I'd like to add at the end. It could be, I'd like to introduce some topics for change in our strategy plan or strategic plan, depending on your preference in that regard. But I was rereading it, as many do, and found just 1 or 2 things I wanted to talk about. If that's okay, I would add that as a 7F. Are there any other suggestions for the agenda?
I'll move that we approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Let me run through the list real quick. Waldo?
Yes.
Donna?
Aye.
Trevor?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. So we have an agenda, which brings us to an opportunity for brief announcements by authority members. Let me go right through that same list and see if anybody has anything they want to say before we get going. Waldo?
Not me.
Donna?
The only thing I'd say is I'm going to have another town hall for the budget next Tuesday at 6:30. But other than that, no, thank you.
Trevor?
Thanks, Bucky. Donna, I will be your county executive support for that town hall. So thank you very much. And just a thanks of appreciation to Bucky for attending recent Board of Supervisor meetings where we have talked about broadband, and just based on, meeting requirements and FOIA, we needed Bucky there, and that not only there for that purpose, but you added great benefit to the conversation. So thanks, Bucky. And then of course, thanks to Mike for a lot of the heavy lifting that he has done to get us to where we are. So thanks.
Very good. Bill? Liz?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
And as for myself, I think I already said it. There are just so many things to cover today. So without further ado, let's go on to the public comment. And here's the opportunity to do as Mr. Deloria instructed us earlier. Anybody who from the public who'd like to participate, either raise your hand if you're in Zoom or press, what was it, *8, I think it was, to let us know if you're on the phone.
So we have Seth Ragosta.
Seth, go ahead.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name's Seth Ragosta. I'm an attorney at Flora Pettit in Charlottesville. My wife and I live in the Samuel Miller district, Ms. Palmer's district. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be heard and the work that the authority is doing. The reason I'm here, this is kind of a preliminary appearance. I have a group of neighbors who plan on coming together in a larger group at the April meeting. I wanted to raise this issue now in the hopes that it helps develop information for that next meeting. We were very happy to see the grants, and I'm sure you'll be talking about this in more detail. Very happy to see the federal grant, very happy to see progress on the state grants and CenturyLink projects in our neighborhood in the Box Holly to Taylor's Gap area. Very concerned and disappointed to find that our homes and neighborhood was cut off of the local state grant and CenturyLink project in favor of the federal FireLink project, where FireLink has been very clear that they only provide broadband service to their electric co-op customers and would only be doing that for the foreseeable future. We are not co-op electric customers, we're Dominion customers. We've been told very clearly by them that they would not service us in the foreseeable future. And so we were very disturbed to find out that they had included our homes in their requested zone for the federal grant, which seems to have potentially cut off our homes from likely broadband development, even though homes around us, the Dickwoods Road area, so on, will be developed using the state grant and the CenturyLink project, which would be the more rational project based on the geography and current utility lines. So I've raised this issue by email to several of you. I very much appreciate the reception and the attention to the issue. I appreciate that it's a complicated issue and there are a lot of moving pieces. We are a dedicated and somewhat aggravated group of homeowners, and we will be making noise about it, but we hope to do that in a constructive way. And I'd just like to make sure that attention's drawn to it. If there is someone from Firefly listening, I hope that they will hear this and reach out to me. I've been trying to get them to communicate with me about this issue and have so far been unsuccessful. That's our issue. I'm happy to go into more detail. I think it's something that is going to kind of come out in some of the discussion that's probably on your agenda. And I'm also happy to provide more detail or answer more specific questions if that would be helpful. Otherwise, I'm here to listen and to prepare our presentation for what I anticipate we'll be saying at the April meeting.
Mr. Ragosta, let me say first that we will, of course, look forward to hearing from your group at that time. But in the meanwhile, with regard to the state funds, the DHCD, the department within the state that is granting us the money, made it clear that areas that had RDOF funding, they would not provide funding for. So we really had no choice but to either decide we wouldn't apply for funds or we would take the areas that had received RDOF funding out of our application. So we did the best we could for the remaining folks and took sections such as yours out of our original proposal. That's the bad news. The good news is when we get to item 7C in tonight's business, we'll be talking, I guess, directly and indirectly about ways to meet your needs. Also, the Firefly folks have more recently made it clear that they are willing to go off network. So I can't speak to exactly what they intend to do with the RDOF monies for your area, but they may or may not be planning to build for you. So with that said, let's move on to the next person.
Okay, we have David Ludwig.
Yeah,
Mr.
good
Ludwig.
evening. Great. Yeah, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. First, congratulations to the board and the Albemarle County staff for that VODI 2021 win. Certainly on the community end, we appreciate all the hard work that went into that. Related to this and following along, I think on a similar note with Mr. Regasta, related to that, in understanding that the county did have to modify their VODI application due to RDOF overlap, how can residents determine whether their particular address was included in the final 2021 VODI project list? So recognizing, for instance, that some neighborhoods are kind of cut in half, even looking at the RDOF mapping, it would appear as though certain lots, certain properties are actually, cut, more or less in half. Some part are shaded in the RDOF shape file, and some portion of a person's lot may not be. So we're just wondering at what point and through what mechanism can folks get confirmation as to whether they are still part of the VODI grant or not?
A great question. Mike, I understand we're not obviously under contract yet for these monies, but is there any reason why we can't put this preliminary information up on the website somewhere?
Yes, sir, Chair, and thanks for the question, David. We are working diligently to define the project areas, and later in this meeting, I'll have a preliminary map that is close to production ready to show everyone that the preliminary parcels that will be included in VODI 2021. There's still a lot of engineering to do, so there's disclaimers on the data we're going to be showing later this evening, but I think you'll have the partial answer. We want to give you a full answer, but a lot of engineering work still needs to be done on the CenturyLink side. So bear with us. We're working as quickly as we can to get definitive answers on which address. In the meantime, people can always contact me as they've done in the past, and I'll work with CenturyLink and Firefly to verify which addresses are in which project. So thank you for the question, David.
And as we develop these resources, we will put links to them up on the albemarle.org broadband website, yes?
That is correct. Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else?
Next, we have Michael Geyser.
Mr. Geyser.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Thank you for all your work, and I'm just hoping for some good news on burying the comm lines in the trench with Dominion Power up in Carsbrook. So thank you very much.
Mike, I've got nothing on this. Do you have anything on that topic?
No new news on that Carsbrook effort other than the information that's been shared through Dominion Power. So something that's still underway with them. I think there's a lot more work on the Dominion side to get the agreement in place, but seems like a separate conversation can be had with that particular area. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I see Mr. Ludwig's hand is up. I'm not sure whether that was from before or not.
Sorry, I've just lowered it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else?
I don't see anybody else.
All righty. Well, thank you all very much for your questions and comments. And we'll go on to the next item, which is regard to the minutes of the last meeting. We have not yet generated those minutes in their completion. They the last bit of that meeting didn't finish until March the 10th. So we will look for that at a future time. Yes, Bill?
Yes, I haven't finished them yet.
Very good. Thank you very much. On to old business. With regard to VODI 2020 and 2021, Mike, is this the right place to insert a little update about the audit that we have coming? You're on mute, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few updates on the VODI 2020. Yes, we do have an audit that actually goes back and will be addressable for VODI 2019. So it just shows you the inner workings of state government. There's some details that we still have to go through, which are explanatory more than anything, just showing actual invoices, things like that. So that's with our Firefly project from 2019. So Chair, you were correct. I did have an update on that in April, we will be going through probably a half day long, although they've taken a full day, but
They
it's
blocked the whole day.
the
That
whole
was
day.
troubling.
Yes. Hopefully we'll be quickly through that, just sharing some non-foiable information with them and going through the process. 2020, there's information out to the community, letting them know that due to weather delays and otherwise, and Derek Kelly is here who can answer questions that I can't about that from the Broadband Authority, if there are questions. But each of the 8 projects have been delayed. The most substantial will be pushed into taking orders in May, but we are targeted to have everything complete before June 5th, but likely more in the first week of May. And there will be some orders being taken as soon as next week with the 2 initial projects that CenturyLink started working on. So progress is being made now that the weather is better, and individuals on those projects will be able to place orders in the coming months. A lot of activity during March and April. One thing that everyone should be aware of, because of the 8 projects, CenturyLink is being strategic in trying to make sure things aren't backed up together so that everyone is placing orders at the same time. So they are being strategic on how they're rolling this out, so there's not a big delay from when a person orders fiber to the premise that they have to wait 2 or 3 weeks. Instead, they're making those a little bit more strategic as they go. So I'm willing to, or I'm here to take questions. I'm sure Derek can take questions about 2020 if there are any.
Seeing and hearing none.
No questions. Great. Okay. The next thing is 2021. Those are an awarded project from the Virginia Telecommunications 2021. Later, I'll have a map that I can display with that as part of the mapping update. So we'll go through the 1,675 new locations that will be available. We do have preliminary address lists for that. We're thinking that it's much better to provide a map that people can go in and utilize to check whether their address is included. So we're working diligently to make that available within the next couple of weeks. It's been a little challenging for specific reasons that some of our parcels have multiple addressable units on them. So they'll have three units on a single address. We want to make sure when a person puts that address in that they show up appropriately. And there's always what we call the fringe areas. All of the projects have to end somewhere. So we just want to make sure we've got as clear as possible with a good way for a person who sees themselves on the edge or not quite there to call. We had one instance of that already, and Derek was able to indicate to the person that they are included in it. So that was the positive one. And, the ones that are close by, it's possible that during the engineering phase that those addresses that are nearby will be included. So just asking for patience as we go through this process. It'll take a while. Another update for the Broadband Authority is that we're expecting the award notice, and the award notice generally includes instructions about how to proceed with going under contract with the Department of Housing and Community Development. So that'll be a contract that the Broadband Authority signs with the Department of Housing and Community Development. And we also, your pen is ready, thank you, Chair. And we also have the requirement of putting together a service agreement with CenturyLink. So Waldo, John, Noreen, and we will definitely ask for Richard Deloria's help, and one of our newest staff members who will be working with us, Robert Rajonas, and I'll announce Robert later. from the school division has also offered to help contribute to working through the details on how we want to set up an agreement with CenturyLink for VADI 2021. So with that, I want to thank everyone who supported, especially the community members who were involved in this. Getting this thing to the finish line was quite the effort, and we really appreciate people putting their information into the survey. And everyone else who's out there who's still in an unserved area, please use that report, www.albemarle.org/broadband survey, broadband report. It'll allow you to provide us information that we can use for future grants. All of this is available at the ABA website. So please, just share with your neighbors and provide some more input to us so we can find those unserved areas. We know where most of them are, but your data is very important to us. So enough said, Chair. Glad to take any questions. Derek here is as well, so we could have Derek answer questions as well. Thank you.
I'll just mention, in the interest of like eating our own dog food here, that I am in one of the theoretical service areas, but is not clear to me from the application that my home is served. So I too am very interested in seeing that data provided. It is not just the general public who wants that.
Thank you, Waldo. Any other questions for Mike on this topic?
I would just echo what Waldo just said. I want to see the map and the information. And I will start just sending people, because I have had some emails. Am I in it? Am I not? And I haven't sent them on yet because I didn't think we had the information at this point. But anyway,
Very good. Mike, did you have more to say about the mapping update, or did you?
That's the next.
That's all you wanted to say about it? Okay.
Well, let's see. Let me check my working copy of the agenda. Sorry, Chair. I just want to make sure I'm on the same path as you. Yeah. So the next item in old business is the mapping update. So if we're proceeding, then yes, I'd like to share my screen if that's possible. If that's okay with the board, moving on.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Without further ado, I'll share my screen and give you guys a view of the map itself is the first thing. So this might be a little difficult to see. Hopefully it looks well for you all. So, this is what we're working on, and this is a rendition that actually shows the parcel numbers. So you'll notice the project areas are outlined in red. This is the VADI 2021 project areas. There's approximately 100 fiber miles to be built to serve the areas that you note on the map. 1,675 locations in various locations throughout the county. The biggest location has now been split into two, and that's the Campbell-Cobham. So, moving through this section of Stony Point Road and then further over, skipping the St. John Road area because that was an RDUF funded area, which I'm going to show in a more interactive map next. But this is the primary area of the project, with numerous Advanced Mill Village up here, and Meriwether Hill and Tillman Road here, and then the Box Holly and Taylor's Gap. Seth was on earlier, and indications are that I think it's Ivy Ridge Road, one of these areas here was also an RDUF area, so it's not within the project area, even though it's within the circle. So you'll see a little bit more of that when we get to the active map. So this is our active map. Does everybody see that? This is the interactive internal. So what's showing up here are the purple areas are the VADI 2020 areas. So all of these areas are currently in process being built with fiber, anywhere from 25% to almost 90% done. The big project areas there are the ones that will be taking a little longer, Howardsville and Green Creek Road. We are so excited that we're getting close to the finish line with those two project areas. Both Buffalo Hills and Coles Rolling Road, both of these will be activated soon. So within the next 2 to 3 weeks, both of those areas will start beginning to take orders. We've got Watts Passage, which is coming, and a couple other areas, Scottsville Road, that are coming on board, and of course Hatton's Ferry. So lots of activity going on in the southern parts of the county right now. So the original VADI 2021 application also had a significant section up here in Boonesville. I said that correctly, right? Yes. So we're looking at this as a CVEC Firefly situation now. So fiber will be provided through CVEC Firefly in this area. You know, one of the things that we talked about with VADI 2021 is this is an extension of the current VADI 2020. So the same crews who would work on these sections would have moved into the other sections to sort of move forward and make these part of the bigger project. At the same time, you know, the key was bringing in Campbell Cobham, as well as some areas that we identified out in the western part of the county. RDUF, it's a funded program. So when people talk about RDUF, it's not like that they're not going to receive funding. They've already been offered funding and they will be executing on projects. But it did indicate, as you can see, I'll do that again for effect, is the census tracts that were offered federal funding for RDUF directly intersected with several of our original projects. So the DHCD group asked us, and we put together a team that rescoped the projects. We wanted to adhere to the VADI guidelines that were presented to us, and we're successful in resubmitting our application, and ultimately we're successful in receiving funds. This doesn't mean that these project areas won't get done. In fact, you can think about it as maybe one, maybe two, but someone will be offering fiber to these particular areas. When is the big question, how to get this to move forward at the same time, ahead of, maybe slightly after, but eventually within hopefully the same time frame. And that's what we need to work on, so that there's equity in the fact that through the RDUF work, we didn't remove, we just changed. So that's the way I like to look at it. The RDUF funding changed the attributes of the census tracts. That gives us the opportunity to build them during, before, slightly after, but definitely going to be built because the funding's available. Hopefully that makes sense. And the interactive map that I showed gives people a little more confidence that things are going to move forward to where everyone is going to have the access to the fiber that they deserve at this
Just
point.
to be clear, Mike, though, for the areas that are in RDOF funded, they're outside of the purview of ABBA. That's a program that's moving forward without our involvement.
At this point, you're correct, Chair. That's correct. Yes, no funding provided through the Broadband Authority for RDUF. Exactly.
And it may also be worth mentioning for some folks' benefit that we have no control over that federal funding. We have no input into it. We have nothing to do with it. And when that federal funding is awarded, it just takes parts of Albemarle away from us being able to serve them using that state funding, because the state funding is superseded by the federal funding. The state funding has to be done in a year or so. RDOF funding has to be done in like 6 to 8 years. But we have no say or control over this.
Okay. Are there questions? Can I stop sharing?
I have a question.
Okay.
On the VADI 2021 map that you showed, And I recognize that we don't know all the places yet, but on that Box Holly segment, there's a lot of density of little dots in places like Rosemont and Ragged,
This one.
Ragged
I got
Mountain
you.
right in there. You showed us yeah, there you go. There's quite a density of dots there. Does that mean that those neighborhoods like right off of 64 where those dots are heavy, that they would be serving all the houses in there? Or could there be the possibility that they would get in there and go only so far down the road and forget the last, 10 houses on the road or something like that? I'm just throwing out examples. Could those sorts of things happen?
That's a great question for Derek, and I noticed Trevor has his hand up as well. I guess I could promote Derek to panelists who.
I've got Derek where he can speak if you'd like.
Okay, thank you, John. And then Trevor had his hand up as well. So, okay, go ahead, Derek, if you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So the dots on that map represent the homes or locations, businesses, whatever, that we were able to keep in our application. So we drew a circle around the area, but if you were to overlay the RDOF in there, we almost had to look house by house. And there was one, and I apologize, my dogs wait to bark for the mute button to go off. But there was even one road where the houses on one side of the house had to be removed, and we were able to keep the houses on the other side on there. So with RDOF, we had to look house by house.
Okay, but when you showed that map, when we saw the map of the RDOF, it didn't go that close to 64. It didn't go into those neighborhoods, right? Right along 64, as I remember when you showed that. How accurate are those RDOF maps? Are you
they should be
looking at
pretty
something more accurate?
No, I think Mike's information is accurate because that's basically the census blocks that the FCC put out. I think the areas we had to remove were on the western end and sort of the southwest end of that cluster of homes. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think there were some that were a little bit closer to 64.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I have one other question, Mike. I have a question. I guess maybe I should wait till the end of the meeting or something to ask this, but are you going to talk, I don't remember, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Are you going to talk at all about the TJPDC
Yes.
meeting? Oh,
Yes.
okay. So I'll ask my question on that when you get to that. Thank you.
Mike, I do have a question on RDOF, just following up from what Waldo said, I guess for clarity in my own head on how the RDOF program works. I understand how it's federal to the provider, and I get that. I understand what we had to do with our application. Is there any opportunities, and this may be for a future discussion, is there any opportunities for incentivizing the speed at which the execution of RDOF will occur? And is that something that we can talk about, or is that completely, I just want to really understand what's in our control and what's not.
Yes, the answer is yes, there is the opportunity. And we'll talk about that during the discussion on the TJPDC. So it's a great segue. Hopefully the agenda supports that. But there are ways to work directly with CVIC and Firefly to determine if there's opportunities to help incentivize and move forward with some of these areas.
Okay.
So
well,
I think
Waldo was about to chime in too, so I want to make
Yeah.
sure he had
Okay.
something. Thank you.
Discussion
I'll just
can
add-
be had. Yes. Go ahead, Waldo.
In
Sorry.
addition to Mike's suggestion, the other thing you can do is foment competition. If they think they're going to be the first movers and it turns out they're going to be 3 years late, that they might move a little faster with competition. So you've heard about both the carrot and the stick, I guess. But I think that's it. I think that's the only way we can intervene. I think in terms of the RDOF process, we have no voice there.
Right. And
I
it's
like how
also-
you're thinking.
Yeah, there's also CenturyLink may have the capability to move forward as well. But it's not with using body funds. So we have to be mindful that we're not allowed to use body funds to extend any of these service areas. So that's the only limiter.
But we can use Albemarle County funds.
We can.
Right.
Yes, we can. We can use American Rescue Plan funds. There's all sorts of opportunities coming. So we have some great opportunities to help move this faster.
Mike, on the mapping topic, what else do you have?
I think that's it, Chair. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the pictures. They're well worth more than 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Trevor, you want to take us through the financials?
Yes, sir. Very easy. It's the same financials as you saw a month ago. No changes, no invoices. I will be talking about an update from the March 17th board meeting on, looks like under 7 Echo, 7E of new business. And we will expect to see a change in that report next month. So no changes currently.
Very good. Any questions for Trevor? Seeing none, let's go to new business. Let me be the first to recognize Christine and Robert, both here from ACPS. Oh, now I can see Robert. I don't know, maybe it was better before. Well, anyway. Mike, do you want to go from here?
Sure. It's my honor to introduce Dr. Diggs, who is the CTO for the school division, and Robert Rajonis, who has been working with me for the 17 years I've been here with the county and doing a great job helping the school division advance fiber to each of their locations. But in addition to that, he's also worked on a lot of the infrastructure that the school division puts into place. Chris, you want to introduce yourself so everyone gets a feel for all the great work that you all have done on the affordability. It's just amazing. I'm constantly impressed by the level of effort the school division has put in to help their student population. So thanks for joining us.
Sure. Yeah, no, I just would reiterate that a high priority for us in the school division is to do everything we can to make sure our students and families are connected. And so partnering with this broadband authority and county government around the efforts that you are spending a lot of time and money on is really important to us, and we want to support you any way we can.
Thanks, Chris. And Robert, few words for the Broadband Authority. He's going to be working on the technical side with me, and John, so it's great to have another techno brain with us. So
I've been working now in the county with technology for, I guess it's about 23 years. So this is definitely an area of my interest and would love to see ubiquitous high-speed internet access.
All right, thank you, sir.
Such a large portion of the demand in the county for broadband stems from the needs to meet educational requirements in the county. And so as the Broadband Authority, I mean, that obviously is a big point of interest for us. And it makes a lot of sense to me to have someone from the school side here at this table to represent those interests, to tell us what's on their mind, to give us feedback on things, and help keep us focused on at least that part of our mission. We obviously have other missions too, but the school population is a huge population in the county, and it affects thousands of families.
Bucky, if I may, I'll just note that I think it was in October, there was a joint Board of Supervisors School Board work session of which broadband was discussed by multiple board members across both bodies about how important it was and reflecting on the pandemic. And so as recent as last month, our county executive in meetings with superintendent talked about the proposed broadband office and just reiterated the support of this effort and coupled now with having kind of the leadership, schools IT leadership supporting in with the Broadband Authority. I think it's a great marriage of efforts. And I know I've seen Mike and Christine just be very collaborative in the work in the past. And I just, welcome that for the future. A question maybe for Richie, is there an action item that we have to vote on, or is this just informational that we're going to now have that staff support from the school side for the authority meetings? Question.
So I don't think there has to be any action taken. I mean, it's a cooperative effort between the two bodies, but other than just working with the broadband, the authority's not hiring him or beatifying him or anything like that. Just so, Robert, thank you. Christine also.
Well, I welcome you both to this table to help us do what we do. Waldo?
I would like to quickly point out that a theme we've seen with our guest from Orange County last month, and then in my private conversation with the person in charge of Nelson County, that and anecdotally around the country, is that big successful county broadband projects often begin, apparently, with the county school system and leveraging E-rate funding. I love that both of you are all on this in this meeting and the prospect of having a representative from the school system continue to join this because the work that you have done over years, particularly looking at you, Robert, is amazing. It's really valuable, and I love it. Having you at the table puts us at least on the right footing compared to some other counties that we've seen be really successful with their broadband efforts.
I'll just jump in and say you're absolutely right that E-rate is a really valuable program and is what has helped Robert and his efforts to connect our schools with fiber. So E-rate's been extremely helpful for us, that E-rate program. And there's efforts to expand it. So we want to support those in any way we can, that program. Hopefully it will be expanded.
A whole bunch of funding is part of the American Rescue Plan for E-rate funding, as I see here. You seem to be well aware.
Yep.
Mike, there's another part of this line item, which is email updates.
Oh, yes, the request to the Broadband Authority. Thank you, Chair. It's good to note. Just a request to make sure that Robert being included in that email chain so that he's aware of what's going on with the Broadband Authority in general is the request. I don't see any issues with that. I think Richie answered that question, but that's the question before the board. It doesn't have to be answered today. Just, I think, as chair, you have the opportunity to instruct me to add him to the list or not. So
to the broadband list.
Yes. Yeah. The distribution list.
I think the only issue that might obtain there is the confidentiality question that occasionally comes up in closed meetings or attorney-client kinds of things. So let me ask our learned counsel to stew on that and let me know if there are any concerns there, or any of the board members for that matter. But mostly I'm going to let this weight fall on Richie.
So there are concerns. So we just have to be careful. And I guess, Mike, what you're saying is that he'll be included in that Universal Broadband Authority list.
So all the emails that come in from the community that go to that email account will be noticed, and also any updates that I provide through that email account, which are all FOIable. So in a sense, it's definitely out there for people to view. But so.
Well, I mean, I have concerns, and I think like CenturyLink, Derek would have concerns about sending proprietary information to broadband, which may be protected or otherwise would be protected. But then if we add a party who's not on the Broadband Authority,
right,
that
then will not be protected.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then look, we can probably talk about this for quite a while, but let's stew on this a little bit and find a way to accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
That doesn't break us at the same time. I'm sure we can. We have enough smart people at the table. We can sort this out. Okay.
Yep.
Can we go on to the next item, Mike?
Sure thing.
And I don't know if that's Mike or Trevor who wants to carry the ball on the broadband affordability discussion and maybe create a setting for it.
Yes, Trevor, if you're approve me moving forward, I can.
Yes, please, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. The broadband affordability discussion has two tenets. The first tenet is general assistance with paying bills. So, you know, there's a couple of programs that are underway, Lifeline and Comcast Internet Essentials, and CenturyLink has a similar product as well, or support benefit program. We're trying to, as a county, so not as the broadband authority, we're trying to extend those benefits, making them more available, more aware, making the community more aware. So just to let the broadband authority know that on that particular thing, bill paying assistance, we are working together with the Department of Equity and Inclusion and the Department of Social Services. So we have some good efforts going on, and we'll be back with the broadband authority on where we're headed with that particular effort. The second,
just to poke a question in on that, Mike, are we looking at alignment with SNAP or with free and reduced lunch or some other existing barometer to help us make that determination?
Yes, all of the emergency broadband benefit program, our goal is to match those qualifications. Internet Essentials from Comcast has the same types of qualifications, so we want to match those in order to provide support. There's also, just to continue on the Internet Essentials goal, there is also a partnership, and one of the reasons to have the school division working with us is that they do have a partnership with Comcast to provide that support as well. So that's a longer term, what is generally called an umbrella program that offsets low income and people who qualify for Internet Essentials. It further offsets their costs. So it's a great program that we learned a little more about today, and we'll be back with the Broadband Authority once we have something in place for both of these benefits that are coming from the federal government and from Comcast. So we're excited to get these things rolling and help more people. Okay. Moving on to the second tenet, it's more on the possibility of the Broadband Authority making broadband more affordable for individuals or homes that have financial challenges in funding what are typically called long drops. So, you know, most of the providers will build to a specific foot, meaning past the serving terminal. They'll build fiber to a certain area. We need to propose or work on a policy that says from that location or that footage further into the home, how do we help individuals by either providing a grant, providing some sort of combination of grant and loan, or potentially even a loan. So for now, it's just a topic to put on the thought process to see if there's a way within our affordability program to work on a policy that the Broadband Authority and the county put into place to help offset temporarily or permanently the extra expense, I would call it, for moving fiber closer to a premise when there is a longer drop involved. So that's the question, and we'll be working on presenting some options or at least some discussion points, probably with a team first before we bring it back to the Broadband Authority. We've already had some preliminary discussions about this. It's just an ongoing thing that we need to work on. Questions like what
can
level?
I make an observation, Mike?
Sure enough. Yes, please.
Richie has reminded me any number of times that we can't actually make grants to anybody.
Right.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Richie, we can pay bills.
Well, we can pay our bills. We can make loans. It's possible that those loans could be forgiven. we can also work with the Economic Development Authority because they have the ability to make grants. And finally, we can, the topic of universal broadband is something that's on their plate at this point in time also, because of potential of agricultural businesses and then at-home businesses. So that's something that they can consider. And I had a final thought, but it's just, the final point is to get the General Assembly to give us authority to make grants.
So we can also work with the ISPs, right? But maybe that wouldn't be needs-based. Just kind of, and not to get in a big discussion about it, but just.
No, it's a good point, is that we could work with the ISPs. The concern that I have, and it's not a great concern, is procurement. So it might have to be, where we ask around or it becomes competitive in some fashion. The other thing is just based on the numbers and then the actual cost per unit. It might be that we're dealing with small purchases. So those are things that, so there are a lot of moving parts, I think.
Mike, you may not want a lot of feedback at this point in time, but thinking about your second tenet, it occurs to me that there are sort of two different categories. I love dichotomies, whether they're real or false. Two different categories of folks. There are people who quite likely couldn't afford the internet in the first place, and therefore also can't afford the hookup charges. And then there are people who can afford the internet, but they're looking at a lot of hookup charge because it only gets so far down their driveway and then they get nothing. And that doesn't seem equitable with the people next door to them who don't live so far down the driveway and they get a connection. The first case is very different, where there's just a financial hardship. The second case, we've talked about this before extensively, and we feel that pain. And I wonder for programs that we're sponsoring, if maybe there's some way, just throwing it out there, because you said you're going to come back to us with specific proposals, but my 2 cents worth on the topic is there some way we can, match the costs? Maybe we don't carry the full freight, but we can, carry half of the load or something like that, take some of the sting out of it. That's all.
I think part of the feedback Mike is looking for on this specific topic is there enough interest by the authority for staff, in this case, Mike, and others within the organization, to kind of continue to vet this concept, and come back with some different options. Certainly there's a legal component. There's a potential, implementation through the EDA. It could be driven by kind of financial constraints on how you would qualify. So I think really it's, the first one I think is pretty, pretty well supported on the affordability that Mike talked to at first. And the second one really is that, helping still in the infrastructure side, but getting those last few hundred feet. And in some cases that may be affordable to a resident, and others it may not be, to Bucky's point. So, I'll just say from my seat on the authority, I'm supportive of some continued due diligence and some work around this that could come back to the authority with some options and some recommendations on what the program might look like, how it might scale, and how it might be implemented.
I echo that. I'd like to see a proposal to chew on.
I do too, but Donna's had her hand up for a while, so I'm going to.
Oh, sorry, Donna, I didn't see it. I missed it.
Thank you, Chair. And echoing what I believe several of you have said, and appreciating that the providers do not necessarily use an absolute defined limit of distance for which there is no fee for the hookup. The reality is that if they will go up to about 600 feet at no cost to the customer, but once you go over 600 feet, it becomes the whole cost to the customer. That is the disproportionate unequitable aspect of this. And frankly, I think that it should be up to 600 feet, if that's the distance, is no cost to the customer. And anyone over that should only have to pay the difference over 600 feet, not everything from the pole to that distance. And that would go a long way to providing a much more equitable provision of delivery of service. And thank you, Chair. Thank you, Supervisor.
So Mike, is that a corporate level decision, or is it possible to talk to, Derek about that?
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Palmer. You're correct. It is a corporate level decision. In the case of CenturyLink, and I could bring Derek back in, but I think they do cover the first 650 feet, but that's not standard across the industry. So another ISP may decide it's only 500 feet or maybe none, or they may say if you order within a specific time frame, meaning you're doing demand aggregation and getting people to sign up early, they may pay for the entire cost. So it varies across internet service providers. The policy that we put in place may be that we're requiring them to pick up that initial 650 feet or some other cost. And then anytime we do business or, partner with a provider, they have to adhere to that specific guideline through policy. That's the challenge that I have when people come to me and ask, what does it take to get past the 650 feet, or what are my additional costs going to be, or I have a specific need and I can't get support through the ISP because I can't afford the expensive cost. So there are places where connectivity is available, and people are coming and asking, what can you do to help offset my what is typically referred to an aid to construction. So across the board, there may be some way we can put in a policy that says this is how much you have to provide when you're doing a partnership with the county. That was a long-winded answer, but yeah.
It's good. I'm glad you clarified that, because my memory when we were working with CenturyLink in the 2020 down in the Howardsville area, I remember asking this question. They said, yes, they'll cover it up to the first 600 feet, but the price that they gave beyond that, as I remember, was not particularly onerous, unless you had a 2-mile long driveway or something like that. And so that's another issue. But anyway, back to the subject matter. I would agree with Trevor's suggestion of bringing us back something. I'd also like to know how often this is a problem. I don't know.
I have something I've wondered about for a while. Are people required to go with the ISP's service, or if I wanted to rent a backhoe and dig a ditch for CenturyLink, could I do that? I mean, that sounds incredibly onerous for CenturyLink to go about coordinating, but I just have to wonder if there's any, is this a free market, I guess is my question, or you got to pay the ISP and that's that. I don't know, but that seems like something to find out, because I think part of the problem here is the sense that like you're paying a tax that you have no choice in, and there's no competition in this market of digging ditches.
So I've enabled Derek to talk in case the commission would like to talk to him.
Derek, would you like to address any of the ongoing questions?
Sure. And, back to the first point about, paying for the drops, or what % of the drop are you paying for? I think when we gave the example very early on, we said that up to 650 feet, there's no charge for it. And we're not going to be sticklers and say, well, this one is 655 feet. We're probably just going to round and say that's fine, and have some margin of error on there. What we said is if it is beyond there, the average price ends up being about $1.55 per foot for any drops that are longer. So if you have 1,000-foot drop, it's going to be in the ballpark of $1,500. Since then, we've actually come back and realized our costs are probably actually higher than that. But because that's what we said publicly and we put it in the Q&A, we're going to live up to that for the 2020 program. But to give an example, I mean, I've seen a couple of driveways. I think it was down around Green Creek Road where someone has a 4,000 or 5,000 foot long driveway. we're not charging that fee as a way of making money. It's really just to recoup the cost of what our contractors are charging us to place that very long drop. And, you know, if there's a 4,000 foot long driveway and it costs us $6,000 to place a drop, there's no way that we can make money not charging for that drop. If someone's going to pay us back $50 a month, their first 8 or 9 years of service charge that they would pay us at $50 a month would just go to cover that drop. So, you know, that's why that is in place. It's not a moneymaker for CenturyLink. It's just a way to normalize that with their neighbors that have driveways that are 200 foot long.
Thank you.
And then for Waldo's question, never been asked before, but I would tend to believe that we probably have to use our drop contractors, just making sure we have the right type of drops and the right connectors on the end of the fiber and all that stuff. But I've never been asked that. I know for businesses, sometimes they'll, if someone's building a new building, you know, they'll have conduit available to us, so we can end up pushing fiber through a conduit as opposed to trying to bore underneath a big parking lot, that type of stuff. But that goes into just us figuring out the cost to get fiber into that business.
Bucky, I was just going to add that I support this study. I think it's a great idea. Even if ABBA can't do it, it may be something that somebody else in Albemarle County can do. It may be something that another broadband authority can do, or it could even be something that VATI wants to look into as a separate grant program. That we may come up with a great idea. So I think it's a good idea to do.
Okay. Great. You're muted, Chair. I'm good.
Is there anything else on this topic?
No, I was going to mention that. Yeah, I think we can move on. Thank you, Chair. Have a lot to take away there. So thanks, everyone.
All right, let's go on to 7C, the RDOF status, CVEC Dominion Rec presentation recap. Boy, we jammed a lot into this one.
Yes, sir. So once again, I'm going to share my screen because this is also a public document. So let's see if I can get this up quickly for you all. So here we go. So you should be seeing the slide 61 of a very lengthy presentation that was made at the TJPDC Friday before last. So the agreement that is being put in place between Dominion Virginia Power, Firefly, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of CVEC, has indicated that they are looking for partnerships to work through the middle mile program that Dominion Virginia Power is working. If you all of us hopefully have had a chance to look through the presentation, but our role will be looking at the defining eligible areas that would qualify for VADI 2022. So some of those areas may be within the RDOF funding areas that have already been put in place. Some of them may be outside of the RDOF, but the request is to work with the group that has come together, Firefly, CVEC, Dominion, as well as REC, Rappahannock Electric, for some of the most northern parts of the county, asking us to share our previous surveys, potentially do a new survey to identify eligible areas, and working together to do a regional VADI application. So for VADI 2022, coming together and doing that. Moving back to decision points, you know, some of the things that they have to work on is you know, finding capital investment. So there may be some other opportunities for the Broadband Authority to work with the partnership outside of VADI. So there are some other things that we could do, and setting up meetings with Firefly to discuss those things is on top of mind. Meaning how do we get together and work through what's happening within the new partnership that's out there. We have a draft MOU that's been distributed to us for consideration. Firefly is asking to do a study to identify eligible areas, but we feel as the individuals, John Noreen and I, we have a good idea of where our eligible areas are and where our primary areas are. So we may be able to potentially skip out of that study because we've already identified where we want to go. So, you know, there's a lot going on that needs to have further discussion. It is a really positive partnership. It's something that we've thought should be done for a while now, and now it's coming to fruition. I think there's the possibility for the Broadband Authority to work collaboratively with Civic Firefly and Dominion Power and others to move our goals faster than having to wait to submit for a VADI 2022 fund and instead try to move forward on our own potentially. So there's a lot of discussion that has to happen around all of this, but looking forward to next steps. I think there will be some additional meetings. We have Firefly and Civic coming into our next meeting. There will possibly be a preliminary meeting to sort of set some ground rules and at least get the conversation going more forward at the next meeting. Questions about that, or would people like to talk about what the middle mile program is or anything else that we could do?
Mike, I'd like to couch this in just a little bit different terms.
Okay. Oh yes, you were there too, Chair. Thank you. Yeah.
My takeaway was that any place in the county that Dominion goes, or that Rappahannock goes, or potentially any other place that Civic Firefly can get to, may potentially, under this partnership and program, be connected via a Firefly fiber cable. So in other words, Firefly is getting serious about getting off of the CVEC network and spreading out into other places. And the backbones for that is going to be largely the Dominion dark fiber that they're going to run for them using the middle mile program that the state has approved. I think not only VADI 2022, but 2023 might be places that we apply to get some of the funding for this. But I see this as an opportunity to make thousands upon thousands of connections in the county. And I think with a little study, we may find that that's something not only we can afford to do, but that we want very much to do. At least that's my hope. I received yesterday a memorandum of understanding under which they'd like to talk some more, et cetera. And I will send that around to the board for your review. We will have folks from CVAC at our next meeting. And we should have an opportunity after that, or we could have an opportunity before that if you wanted to call another meeting to talk about elements of that memorandum. But before we get to that point, I'd like everyone to get a chance to look at it and then let me know if you think there's a need for a meeting before our next meeting, since we will have the CVEC folks here at the next meeting. This looks very exciting to me. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thanks, Bucky and Mike. I do have a question. Looks like there's some other hands that are raised as well.
Trevor, you've got the ball. Okay.
Thanks. It was it's really more trying to understand that. Mike, can you pull that back up?
Sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay.
Really trying to understand the logistics on this just a little bit. So it's TJPDC led with the kind of the Mike shaking his head no. So
no, sorry.
Okay. So looking for some clarity on that. The MOU is for what and then with whom? You know, the for what, is it for the study? And then is it with Albemarle County? And then if that's the case, is that ABBA that would approve of that? Or is it the Board of Supervisors or the county executive? So I wanted to make sure, you know, I'm wearing dual hats. ABBA certainly has a significant role here, but if it's a legal document, that might require that to actually go to the board. And so we just need to be mindful of it. And then what is the timing? if we're talking 22 construction, this feels like it's a pretty quick effort to kind of get us there. So probably about a half a dozen questions that I just blurted at you. Thanks.
Well, first off, the MOU, I will, if someone tells me this is something that the county needs to sign as opposed to ABBA, then I'll certainly bow to that opinion. But near as I can tell, the county has ceded to us some responsibility in that regard, and we can certainly enter into contracts. So I'm not concerned about that. But like I said, I'll send it around. You guys can look at it. Richie's already had eyeballs on it to tell me if it was too horrible even to send. So the timing is tight. It's going to be very tight to get a VADI 2022 application in. I think there may be a little hubris there, which is not to say that we might not cherry pick some low-hanging fruit and go, yeah, these are going to be part of VADI 2022. We already know we're going to do that, and we'll develop the rest of the plan as we go forward. I think there might be an opportunity to do that. But there are things that you need to look carefully at in the MOU. I don't intend to disclose those in this meeting. Every sign is that the parties involved here, the MOU is between CVEC, Dominion, Rappahannock, and then the signing counties who will be the partners in this process. And the MOU really is binding only to the extent of let's look at it, and not not do some other things while we're looking at this. Then obviously that would lead to some other steps beyond that, and the MOU details what those steps might be. But you can, at any time, you can step back and say, I don't want to do that anymore, and back away. So that's pretty much all I have to share on that at this time.
You've muted yourself.
I'm sorry. I don't know if I've covered all the questions you raised.
Yes, thank you, Bucky.
Okay. Waldo, I think you had your hand up, and then Liz.
Yeah. Do we have any sense of the ambition here, either in terms of how much these companies are interested in extending in geographic area across Albemarle, and the timeline? Are they thinking all of Albemarle in 20 years? Are they thinking 10% of Albemarle in 2 years? Do we know anything?
The sense I got, and again, this is far from a committed contract, but the sense I got was over the next couple of years, wire up everybody who wanted to be wired up.
All right. Not bad.
And with Dominion carrying a lot of the heavy freight in terms of, middle mile running, they may have the legs to do that.
This is great.
Liz?
So I did listen to this meeting, and I had some confusion here and there. Mike, could you scroll up closer to the beginning of it where there's the map that shows the areas that Dominion and CVIC and REC have? Yeah, that one there. Thank you. I got kind of confused with this map, especially on the area in the central area that's clearly Dominion. Does that mean Dominion's going to put the middle mile in there for sure, and then hope that somebody comes in, or what does that mean? And I'll extend that question so you can help me, because Comcast is in some of those areas.
Right.
And I have a neighborhood of which I am part of that has an awful lot of people that want broadband. And Mike has explained to us in the past that that Comcast is actually more likely to come there. So can you explain basically what that map means, and where does a Comcast fit in?
Okay, thank you, Chair Palmer. A quick overview. These are the electrical service areas. So that's a clear designation of where electric providers exist within Albemarle. So that answers the first question per se.
No, wait a second. I'm sorry. Could you say that again? It answers who provides electricity.
Yes, exactly.
But does it mean that they will put the middle mile in all those areas?
They are making a request to make that middle mile available to other service providers. So they have to go through the SEC to do that. I can't really speak to when they will provide the middle mile fiber to their substation. So remember, it's a grid upgrade, meaning one of the things Dominion wants to do is provide fiber to their substation, similar to what CVEC has already done. So that bringing that middle mile to each of the substation gives them the opportunity to lease back either dark fiber or provide it in some mechanism to a different service provider. Dominion will not be a service provider. So I agree with you. The confusion in this map indicates that these may be all of the service areas. This particular map was just showing where electricity is currently provided, with middle mile to come as either middle mile to the substations alone, or it could be middle mile that then could be turned into the partnership, meaning it would be leased back to one or more service providers as a means for them to tie into the internet backbone as the last mile provider. Hopefully that makes sense. It's complex. I think those are great questions we could ask of Firefly when they come in in April. So I'm hesitant to even.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I hope that provided some clarity on.
It does. It provides a lot of clarity for me. Thank you. Has Dominion, do we know if Dominion has started bringing that fiber to any of their substations yet?
Not that I'm aware of, but that would
in
be
this area, no, but I think they have done it in other parts of the state.
Yes, definitely they have. So good point, Chair. Thanks for jumping in. Yep.
And Comcast is just sort of, I mean, they're in several areas in the county. They're out in Greenwood, for instance,
right.
and in parts of Ivy. So does Comcast have anything to do with, I mean, it's cable, but I mean, could you explain if that has anything to do with this whole process? Clearly not, I don't think, but anyway.
No. Actually, it does. There's a limitation on where the state law permits, under this pilot program, permits Dominion to run fiber. And the limitation is it can only run fiber into areas that are, and this is in the MOU as well, that are unserved as defined by the VADI guidelines. And the VADI guidelines were originally 10.1, they're 25.3 now. So an area that already has 25.3 service, it technically can't really be served by this. An area that does not have that service throughout is available.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful too.
Any other questions? Any other hands up that I'm missing? Okay. Well, we have a lot to chew on between now and the next meeting, and I'm excited about this. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but there's huge potential. And I think if you guys hear the same thing from CVEC that we heard when this presentation was made, you'll hear that they see there's a lot of potential here too, but they don't know exactly where it's going to go. So we're not at the here's the defined, sign the contract and you get everything, but we're at the sign this deal and we'll explore how we can set up. You get as much as we can get you.
I want to point out we have packed a lot into an hour and 19 minutes. Go us. This is amazing.
Let me ask, with regard to the remaining items on the agenda, I think they're going to take more than 5 minutes. So let me suggest we take that bio break that I spoke of at the beginning of the meeting and resume in 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Let's make it actually 5 minutes, like
that's
6.
What we do. Come on back at 6:24, 6:25, something like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let's get back to it. I believe we finished up item 7C, at least for the time being, but we have more to do in the future on this. VADI 2022 preparations. Mike?
Hello, thank you, Chair. 2022 preparations, I'm excited. We have some input sessions that are going to be happening. Hopefully I shared all of that with the Broadband Authority. If not, I will. The dates have been announced. The applications will be due in September this year. Pretty soon I'll write that up on my whiteboard because that's a way that I'm constantly reminded of the schedule. As normal, there will be a responsibility for the Broadband Authority to post notice. So that'll be the first big deadline for us to post notice of where we plan to submit applications, what areas. John Noreen and I are working hard to identify all of the unserved areas within the county. We have a good idea of where those are. We hear from community members all the time, so we've got a real good idea of where we need to go. So with the VADI 21 application done and RDUF in play, it really gets us to targeted areas that we're going to help the Broadband Authority understand where we're headed.
Mike, can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure, yes, please.
I'd like to call out to the rest of the Broadband Authority, Mr. Culp's actions with regard to the VADI 2021 application and approval, which got us to 5 in a row.
Don't need to do that.
Outstanding and much appreciated.
Okay, yeah, you did. No, thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, thank you for that. Generally, we're excited about 2022. We know we have a lot of work ahead of us. We definitely want to move forward with the potential of convincing or working with DHCD to up the speed threshold. We're not sure the 25.3 is the most optimal, but there's some potential. That's one of the big things. And obviously with the General Assembly putting money forward to upgrade the state maps to the tune, I think, of $450,000 over the next 2 years, there is great effort. And I applaud the Broadband Authority for work both in supporting that effort, as well as the continuation of federal funding that's coming down. It's letters like from the Broadband Authority to our state legislators and federal legislators that help move the ball forward and get people in action. So thank you for that. VADI 2022 has another 49 million in play. So we're very anxious and hopeful that we'll have a good application this year. And we've already heard from 2 providers that are interested in partnering. So things are working in our favor. So we're looking forward to a good summer of putting together a VADI 2022 application. And that's it for me, Chair. I know I drew on a little bit there, but glad to update everybody. Thanks for your help.
Thanks, Mike. 7E, the American Rescue Plan. We're not going to cover the whole plan. Board of Supervisors actions impacting broadband and March 17th appropriation discussion. Trevor, do you want to lead on that?
Sure, I can do that. And I think Mike will certainly chime in. As you recall from our last meeting, we provide information of the board action from the February meeting, where the board directed staff to bring back a $3 million appropriation for March 17th to then be appropriated for both the infrastructure, and what was proposed for some 21 money related to the broadband office and the affordability program. So that was the action that was provided to staff. Staff was preparing for that. We got into our FY 2022 budget work sessions, and it was the day or two before the meeting on the 17th. Supervisor Palmer asked a fantastic question, which was, do we want to appropriate all of this money now, or would the ARP be eligible, an eligible source of one-time funding to fund this program? And I think Supervisor Palmer, we all said, well, that's a great question. and it, you know, caused staff to take a step back. What we brought forward to the board on March 17th was an appropriation request for $350,000, of which $100,000 is dedicated to the startup of the broadband office. And then I apologize, my dog has never whined while I've been on unmuted, and I hear that now.
Nothing you can do.
She's old too. The second piece of it, the 250,000, is for the affordability program that we spoke of. And so really, I wanted to just note that with the intention of addressing the remainder amount as we look at the America Rescue Plan, staff will be bringing information to the board on Monday, the 29th, in a budget work session where we lay out what we know. There's still a lot that we don't know, but we're very confident that broadband will be an allowable usage of that funding. It's going to come to the county in 2 tranches, divided in half. One, 60 days from when it was approved, so in a couple of months, then 12 months out from that. And so the board will see some categories of potential uses. We'll learn a lot more over the next few weeks, but really wanted to just note that the board did appropriate $350 to allow the work to get started. On the broadband office piece, there's some HR work that we need to do, and more to follow on that, but we're going to be moving forward on that activity. Mike already briefed the work that he's doing with our partners and departments on the affordability piece. So that's underway, and then a lot more will be known, on Monday, and then ultimately the board hopefully will give direction for the full funding of the $3 million that we had talked about a couple of months ago. I'm going to mute myself and let my dog out of my room right now. I apologize.
And I just want to say that I had no intention of keeping money from the broadband authority when I said that.
No, my understanding was that there was a clear commitment to make sure we got more money. So yes. I was okay with that.
If I could add, Supervisor Palmer's question was so astute, because with a lot of the constraints that have been imposed under the CARES money last year, and now not knowing some of what the regulations may be with ARP, the wisdom in recognizing that by moving out of the budget at the moment, the funding, while the board is still totally committed to providing funding, ensured a greater degree of flexibility and potentially, and we don't know yet, but potentially even more money that we might be able to put into it, rather than getting obligated and then constrained on what we could do. So, I mean, it was a bright light that went on in everyone's mind after Liz asked the question, which put us in a much stronger position. And as she mentioned, the board is totally committed to providing the financial support. This was just a really smart way to make sure we had as much flexibility as possible.
Thank you for those comments. It was very clear from my brief interactions with the board earlier last month, that the board's very committed to broadband, as they should be for one of their strategic goals. And I'm not concerned about the board's commitment level at all. And I would encourage the rest of the Broadband Authority to be equally not concerned.
I'll also note, and Mike may be able to talk more about it, that my comments really were in the context of what we're anticipating our local government to receive. We believe there are other straight line sources of funding from the ARP to schools and to other, to our transit partners. Mike, I know, is kind of working on what might come, to the state and from the state that's dedicated to broadband. So what I spoke of really was just looking at our local government share and how that may get used, moving forward. I do think there will be other sources for broadband. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think it was a great decision that was made to sort of put the current 3 million on pause with the intent that it may be doubled So I agree with the chair. It's, we have the ability to do a lot of good work. The only concern that I continue to have is, and I think this is addressable, and that is if ARP is paused itself, what does that mean to our pause? For instance, if ARP doesn't show up until August, for example, if we have justification that moves us forward to utilize some of the other funding mechanisms that the county has, I think that is a separate item that the Broadband Authority would need to talk about in the event that ARP doesn't come through as quickly as we hope it will. There's no guarantee on how the federal funding is going to flow down to the county. So it's just something that we're going to be on edge. Well, at least I'm going to be on edge with that. I just want everyone to realize that if something comes up that we need funding in an immediate way, there may be ways that the Broadband Authority can approach the Board of Supervisors. And I guess that's an option, right? So I can sleep better.
And we certainly would in that circumstance.
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. So that helps me a lot, because there may be, we just don't know. We don't know, somebody could come to us and say, hey, we're ready to go now. We want to extend, and this is all it's going to take. And we might need to work with them. So
I look forward to the day where we stand in front of the Board of Supervisors with that request in hand.
Yes, sir. You got it. Me too.
Supervisor Price has her hand up.
Hi, Donna.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Thank you, Chair. And just to follow up with my earlier comments, they really were intended more for the public, Chair, to help make sure the public understood sort of the steps that we went through, so much directed to the Broadband Authority members who are present here this evening. Thank you.
Very good. Anything else on this topic? Okay, then let's move on to the item that I tacked on to the end of the agenda, the strategic plan. First, let me just speak in general. The purpose of the strategic plan is to communicate. It's to communicate within this group, and it's to communicate to outsiders what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we think we're going to get there. And we put that in place last summer. If you haven't looked at it in a while, I encourage you to do so. I picked it up the other day, trying to answer a question, and in the process of looking through it, found three things that I immediately thought, we should make some changes here. And not asking for your changes at this time, but let me introduce one particular topic and then two sort of general topics. We've already spoken about broadband affordability. That's something we give a passing glance to in the strategic plan, but I think it's probably time that we need to pick that up and be a little more affirmative in our strategy there. And it may be that the work that Mike and Trevor are going to bring back to us may help inform that strategy. Second, the whole notion of a broadband office is not taken up in the strategic plan, and to the extent that might play a role, we might consider that in there. And the third, the item that caught my eye at the time and made me want to put it on the agenda, we've already touched glancingly on with regard to VADI guidelines, and that is the 25.3 broadband definition speed. I submit that if you have two children at home and are trying to work from home for the last year, if you've got a 3 megabit upload speed, you're not capable of doing that. And I'm wondering if 25.3 is the right number anymore. The 25 is not so much of a concern to me, but the 3 megabits is very much a concern to me. At my household, we have a 2 megabit uplink, which means when I'm having these meetings, my wife is not having Zoom calls with her family. We are careful about what we do to minimize the disruption, and I'm sure that's the case in many, many other places. And I don't want to bring this question to an answer at this meeting, and I'm certainly happy to entertain the folks who raised their hands. But I note also that at a federal level, it's already been proposed, well, we should consider 100-100 symmetric. That's a little more adventurous than I wanted to be, but I was thinking maybe 10 megabits up would be a useful a number. And I put it out there just as something to think about. And encourage you to look at the strategic plan in general, as we've talked about things even tonight that might have some bearing on that. And I'd love to see what, if anything, we need to change in that plan to meet our continuing goals. So I'm not sure if it was Waldo or Liz first who got their hand up. Let me call on Waldo because he's in the upper corner of my screen. So
I'll just point out that we revisited that discussion in the summer when we were trying to figure out what to put in the RFP for what ultimately became the contract awarded to Beam. And the conclusion we drew at the time is that under the circumstances, we didn't want to create standards that we then would restrict us from funding good options under the circumstances, such as point-to-point wireless. I reluctantly agreed because I think that was right, but I think that's something we should constantly reconsider, particularly as we, God help us, exit the present emergency. I think we can increase our standards yet again. And I just thinking out loud here, the reason that we used for keeping those numbers low should disappear soon. And then I think the one reason we didn't raise it before might be gone.
good. Thanks, Waldo. Liz?
I don't have my hand raised. I almost always have something to say, but I don't have it raised.
You know, I was watching my screen earlier today, and I may have just had an artifact on your block, so that might have been entirely on me. I apologize.
No, right now I'm kind of where Waldo is I don't want to get in. Well, I don't know if he's there now, but I'm a little bit concerned about making that upload. As somebody who somehow does 2 Zoom meetings at a time in our household and has never gotten more than one up on any of my tests, it just seems like that's a hard one to reach right now, Bucky.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So I just put it out there as something we'll talk about at another time. But the point was, we should all sort of review on a regular basis the strategic plan, and let me kick off that in your mind so that by, say this time, say a year after its original date, so by the June meeting, we could have a revised strategic plan ready to go with any changes that we see fit that we've talked about at that time. That's really what I wanted to kick off now. And with that, that takes us to the end of the formal agenda. Is there anything else?
Bucky,
yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I raised my hand.
Oh, yes.
I support that. I know as Mike and I worked through the framework through the fall, we often did it with the strategic plan, on one screen, and information on another. And so, where we are now is different than where we were as an authority in the summer. It's all good. The strategic plan should reflect that for ABBA. And then I would also ask, just for consideration, is should that plan be presented in a way to the Board of Supervisors where we as a board might want to adopt that, or just to add kind of further the value of that as a guiding document for the county. So just throwing it out there for consideration. I appreciate you bringing it up, and I do think it's something that we would want to tweak as we move. Waldo, hopefully out of the pandemic and into new normal, which is still going to need a lot of bandwidth at our homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Anybody else before we bring this meeting to a close? On a personal note, I get my first jab tomorrow, so I'm excited about that.
Congratulations.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second for that? It looks like Liz got the second. Let me call a quick roll call and we'll get this done the right way. Waldo?
Yes.
Donna?
Aye.
Trevor?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. We are adjourned. I note for you that our next meeting is not Wednesday the 28th, it's Monday the 26th. So make sure you've updated your calendar accordingly. And I thank you all very much for hanging out so long. I wouldn't have kept you so long, except we had so many good things to talk about.
Yes.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank